Jasmine Crockett exposes Elon Musk's school AI and shuts it down. The question Jasmine Crockett asked wasn't loud. It wasn't accusatory. It didn't come with theatrics. It just stopped Elon Musk mid-sentence. In a congressional hearing meant to showcase the future of education technology, the room expected innovation. What it got was interrogation not of a person, but of a system quietly watching children. Jasmine didn't need a viral soundbite. She brought a folder. Inside were stories. Not headlines, handwritten letters. Test results. Disciplinary notices auto-generated by AI. One document showed a 10-year-old flagged as a disengagement risk because he looked out the window during a quiz. Musk had brought projections charts and software demos. Jasmine opened a letter from a mother. My son was suspended for blinking too much. The school said it was non-cooperative eye behavior. She didn't raise her voice. She just read. And the room froze. Because sometimes the most powerful challenge isn't a rebuttal. It's a question so simple, so grounded in truth, that silence becomes the only honest answer. This wasn't a showdown, it was a spotlight. And as Musk looked down, Jasmine lifted the folder once more. This isn't about stopping technology, she said. It's about remembering who we're building it for. The hearing had started like any other. A long table lined with polished nameplates, microphones, angled perfectly, cameras perched at every corner. Elon Musk sat at the center, flanked by 2 senior engineers and a legal counsel. On the wall behind him, a projected slide rotated through bullet points: efficiency, innovation, data transparency. He was here to defend EduTrak, a flagship AI-powered student engagement system, implemented in over 1,300 schools across the U.S. EduTrak uses cutting-edge technology, Musk explained, to personalize learning, reduce teacher burnout, and optimize outcomes. He outlined pilot results: standardized test scores up 11%, behavioral incidents down 26%. The press nodded. Lawmakers skimmed their briefing folders. Then Jasmine Crockett adjusted her mic. Mr. Musk, how many parents signed informed consent forms for the biometric data collected? Musk hesitated. Parental notifications are standard across our partner districts. That's not an answer, she said. How many signed consent forms? A beat. I don't have that number. Jasmine opened the red folder. Inside, she retrieved a stack of parent testimonies, letters, screenshots, printouts. Here are 146 families from 4 states. None of them received a single opt-in request. She placed a page on the table. Here's a mother in Missouri. Her son, diagnosed with ADHD, was flagged for patterned eye avoidance. That alert auto-triggered a school counselor call. No human reviewed it. Musk began to reply. Jasmine continued. Here's another, a 12-year-old in Fresno, flagged as a Level 3 engagement concern. Reason. The system misread his head tilt as disinterest. He was wearing a neck brace. She looked directly at him. Are you optimizing learning or automating misjudgment? No answer. Across the room, murmurs began. A senator leaned toward his aide. A reporter scribbled something urgently. Jasmine pressed on. This isn't isolated. A New Jersey school flagged 37 students for anomalous focus metrics last semester. 31 of them were ESL learners. She read another letter. My daughter came home crying. She said the computer told her she was not trying hard enough. She's 8. She's dyslexic. Musk finally spoke. The AI adapts based on trends. It's not meant to punish. But it does, Jasmine said, because when tech replaces judgment, bias becomes automated. She pulled out a timeline. Here's a rollout calendar from a partner district. Notice what's missing. Musk scanned it. I'm not sure. No public consultation, no stakeholder review, no parent forum. She held up the final page. You deployed surveillance on children without asking permission. If this were a private home, it would be called trespassing. Silence. Then she delivered the question. Mr. Musk, when did we decide that optimizing a child was more important than understanding them? Cameras flashed. Her voice, calm but cutting, hung in the room. The session broke for recess. As Musk walked out, reporters surged forward. Jasmine stayed behind. She began to collect the pages. Her aide whispered, "That went viral already." She nodded. Not interested in going viral. I'm interested in going real. Outside the Capitol, parents waited. Some held homemade signs, "Let our kids be kids." Others carried folders of their own blue, yellow, purple, but all carried stories, and Jasmine was ready to listen. In the days following the hearing, the red folder became more than a prop. It became a symbol of stories long ignored, of systems hiding behind code of parents, tired of being left out of the conversation. Hashtag #YoAshtor folder truth hit trending lists in 6 countries. But Jasmine Crockett wasn't posting, she was organizing. By the end of the week, her office had logged over 5,000 direct testimonies, parents, teachers, students, even a few district IT workers. A team of interns worked around the clock, categorizing every submission. Jasmine insisted each be read. Meanwhile, Musk's PR machine kicked into overdrive. On Good Morning America, Musk claimed Jasmine Crockett has misunderstood our mission. We aren't tracking children, we're empowering them. But that same morning, a new leak surfaced. A slide deck from a 2022 EduTrak investor pitch titled, "Predictive Discipline, a New Revenue Stream." The damage was real. Jasmine called a press conference not in a studio, but on the steps of a public school in Baltimore. Behind her stood 30 parents and 12 teachers. Each held up a page from the folder. "These are not anti-technology people," Jasmine said. "These are pro-accountability voices. There's a difference." She unveiled her proposal, the Student Surveillance Disclosure Act legislation requiring full transparency for any biometric or behavioral software in public education. Opponents called it overreach. Tech lobbyists warned it would cripple innovation, but Jasmine had her own kind of lobbying. She visited 6 cities in 10 days, hosting town halls, meeting with PTA leaders, touring schools, where the software was quietly implemented. Everywhere she went, the folder came with her. In Cleveland, a 14-year-old girl approached her trembling. "They said I failed digital citizenship training. I didn't know blinking too much could be a fail." Jasmine took her hand. "You didn't fail anything." In Dallas, a mother showed her the real-time alert she received when her son exhibited disengaged posture. It included a time-stamped GPS location and suggested follow-up, evaluate for compliance tendencies. Jasmine read it twice. She added it to the folder. In LA, a teacher broke down. "They used to say I was here to inspire. Now they want me to monitor." And still, the data kept coming. EduTrak stock dropped 8%. A congressional subcommittee opened a formal review. Then, quietly, a whistleblower contacted Jasmine's office, a former product manager for EduTrak. He requested anonymity, but handed over a USB drive. Inside, internal emails, demo videos, and a recorded Zoom call in which executives discussed gamifying compliance metrics for future monetization. Jasmine didn't leak it. She brought it to the committee. The next hearing was standing room only. Musk declined to appear. Jasmine read excerpts from the whistleblower file, then she paused. "I'd like to read a letter," she said. She held up a worn envelope. "This came from a middle schooler in Michigan. It reads, 'I don't know if I'm good at school anymore. The computer says I'm a distraction. My mom says I'm just different.'" She looked around the room. "Maybe it's time we stopped asking children to adjust to machines and started asking machines to adjust to children." The applause was long. Even some skeptics joined in. That night, Jasmine didn't go on TV. She visited a public library. She read letters from the folder out loud, just to the people in the room. Because sometimes the movement starts with listening, and sometimes that's enough to make a system shake. But this time Jasmine knew it wouldn't be enough to shake it. It needed to be rebuilt. So she went further. She convened a bipartisan caucus of lawmakers, inviting members from red and blue districts who had received letters of their own. What they shared wasn't ideology, it was constituents in pain. Senator Malik Rivera, a Republican from Arizona, stood beside Jasmine at the next press event. "This isn't about politics, it's about trust. If the system watching your child can't be explained in plain language, it shouldn't be in your school." They introduced a companion bill, the Family Data Consent Act, which gave parents the right to see exactly what data was collected, how it was stored, and who had access to it. It also mandated an annual opt-in, not opt-out. Meanwhile, investigative journalists picked up Jasmine's lead. A Pulitzer-winning reporter from ProPublica published an exposé titled "School or Surveillance Inside EduTrak's Secret Partnership Pipeline." The story revealed dozens of private data-sharing contracts between EduTrak and third-party analytics firms. Public pressure mounted. At the next board meeting of the National Association of School Administrators, over 400 district leaders voted to suspend EduTrak services until new federal guidelines were released. Protests turned into forums. Forums turned into coalitions. The red folder turned into a toolkit, replicated across school boards. Jasmine created a free online archive, the Folder Project, where families could upload stories, read FAQs about AI ethics, and print template letters to demand transparency. Within weeks, the site had 2.3 million visitors. Then came the unexpected twist. A leaked internal memo from Musk's foundation revealed that while EduTrak was publicly branded as voluntary, certain pilot districts were offered large grants contingent on 100% implementation without parental interference. Jasmine held a press conference the next morning. She read the memo word for word. Then she raised her eyes to the cameras. This isn't about fixing bugs. This is about a culture that treats consent as an obstacle. That night, EduTrak's board called an emergency meeting. The next morning, 5 executives resigned, and Jasmine showed up at a town hall in Milwaukee. She didn't bring a speech. She brought the folder. She opened it, took out a drawing, a crayon sketch of a classroom with one student isolated in a red square. It came from a 7-year-old named Max. His note read, "The screen says I'm wrong a lot. I try to be good." Jasmine looked at the crowd. "There's nothing wrong with Max," she said, "but there is something very wrong with a world that makes a 7-year-old feel like he needs to be tracked to be trusted." And the room rose in quiet agreement. The system wasn't just shaking anymore. It was beginning to bend. Milwaukee wasn't the last stop. Jasmine kept moving. In Denver, she walked into a district meeting where parents lined the halls, each holding a piece of paper. A father handed her a printout. "This is the incident report generated when my son yawned. It says he's at risk of chronic disengagement." The man's hands shook. He's 10. He was tired after soccer practice. Jasmine took the paper gently. "That shouldn't be a violation. That should be childhood." She added it to the folder. In Miami, a student-led walkout gained national coverage. Hundreds of teens wore red, carried symbolic folders, and posted videos of themselves, covering school surveillance cameras with sticky notes that read, "See me, not my data." One student stood on the school steps and read a poem. "I am not an algorithm. I am a heartbeat. I am a question mark, not a checkbox." The poem went viral. EduTrak attempted damage control with a new transparency initiative. They launched a dashboard showing parents a simplified version of data collected, but it was vague: no timestamps, no AI models, no external sharing details. Jasmine called it out in a televised statement. "You can't put a fresh coat of paint on a cracked lens and call it clarity," she said. "The public doesn't need prettier lies. They need uncomfortable truths." Then came congressional subpoenas. Emails between EduTrak and state education boards revealed a deliberate obfuscation strategy. One line stood out: "Parents don't need complexity. They need confidence." Jasmine read that aloud at the next hearing. "That's not confidence. That's condescension. That's control wearing a customer service smile." The hearing room echoed with silence. Meanwhile, whistleblowers kept coming forward. A former EduTrak engineer revealed a compliance algorithm that adjusted student recommendations based on engagement history, not learning needs. Translated fall behind, once get flagged forever. And that label followed them through the semester, through schools, sometimes across state lines. Jasmine presented this to the House Ethics Committee. They call this predictive education. I call it predetermined limitation. We've just mechanized academic prejudice. Outside the movement was no longer symbolic, it was structural. Districts cut contracts. Parents filed class action lawsuits. One major teachers' union threatened a nationwide boycott unless real reforms were made. And amid all of this, Jasmine got a message from Elon Musk, a request private dialogue. She agreed, but only under one condition: full transparency. The meeting would be recorded, unedited, and archived online. It happened in a neutral space, a Washington, D.C. auditorium with cameras rolling. Seats were filled with journalists, educators, and parents. Musk opened, "I never wanted harm. I built EduTrak to solve inefficiencies, not create inequality." Jasmine replied, "Intent does not absolve impact, and right now, your product is failing the very people it claims to help." They debated metrics, definitions, ethics. Jasmine cited letters, cases, classroom stats. Musk defended algorithms, misinterpretation scale. Then Jasmine posed a challenge. Would you let your own children be tracked the way these kids have been? Musk paused, blinked. No. That one word traveled faster than any press release. The video hit 20 million views in 24 hours. Jasmine didn't gloat. She simply said, "Then let's build a system where no child ever has to answer to a machine that doesn't understand them." Policy accelerated. A federal oversight committee was created. EduTrak's license was suspended pending third-party audits. The Department of Education launched its first-ever AI in Schools task force with Jasmine as an advisor. But Jasmine didn't stop there. She returned to Detroit, to Portland, to Austin. She met with students not in auditoriums, but in cafeterias, art rooms, playground benches. She listened to the fears, to the fatigue, to the fight still inside them. Max, the boy who drew the red square, greeted her with a hug. "They stopped the computer from calling me wrong," he said. "My teacher smiles more now." Jasmine knelt. "You were never wrong. You were unseen, but now you're visible." And this time she didn't put the paper in the folder. She kept it in her hand. Because now the whole country was reading with her. And the system wasn't just bending anymore. It was beginning to break. The fall of EduTrak was not the end. It was a clearing. And Jasmine knew where a system falls, a blueprint must rise. In early spring, a group of educators, civil rights advocates, ethicists, and data scientists gathered in a round table convened by Jasmine's task force. They called it the Summit for Human-Centered Education Tech. No tech sponsors, no glossy presentations, just long tables, open laptops, and whiteboards covered in sticky notes. The first question Jasmine wrote on the board was simple. What does dignity look like in a digital classroom? No one had a perfect answer, but that was the point. In this room, silence didn't mean defeat. It meant consideration. Over 3 days, a new framework emerged. 5 principles of student data dignity. Consent must be comprehensible. Surveillance is not support. Bias must be measured, then broken. Data is not destiny, no algorithm, without accountability. Jasmine pushed to codify these into law. But more than that, she pushed them into conversation at school, boards, parent nights, town halls. Meanwhile, teachers began to reclaim their roles. In Des Moines, one district launched a human-first tech pilot tools designed not to monitor, but to mentor. No facial tracking, no posture scores, just apps that helped teachers track real feedback and allowed students to annotate their own progress. Student anxiety dropped. Engagement rose. Parents wept at board meetings. It finally feels like the school trusts our children again. In Atlanta, a parent-teacher committee rewrote their district's tech charter. For the first time, students had a seat on the review board. "If it's about us, we should be in the room," said a 10th grader. The Folder project site became a hub for change. It added resources for how to audit your school's tech use, how to write to your district, how to explain data rights to a child. The site even launched a peer-reviewed index rating school software based on transparency, bias mitigation, and accessibility. Within months, districts began using it as a procurement benchmark. Jasmine toured colleges. She wasn't running for higher office, she was recruiting. "We don't need more heroes," she told students. "We need more stewards." And they came. A public university in Colorado launched the first undergraduate degree in ethical educational technology. The core text, a compilation of the folder letters. Meanwhile, EduTrak was sold. Its new leadership issued a public apology. "We forgot the people in our product. That won't happen again." But Jasmine didn't accept apologies. She watched implementation. She attended pilot classes. She asked second graders, "What's your favorite thing about school today?" Answers like, "My teacher read my story out loud," replaced, "The screen didn't say I was bad." That was progress. In Minneapolis, a school counselor hosted a workshop for other educators titled "From Metrics to Meaning." It focused on restoring human judgment, rebuilding trust, and teaching emotional literacy, not just measuring it. At a ceremony marking the launch of the National Educational Technology Ethics Board, Jasmine stood beside educators and students holding red folders. A young boy stepped to the mic. "They used to say I was a problem. Now they say I'm potential." Jasmine smiled. "That's because you always were." The crowd stood, not in protest, in recognition. The system hadn't just broken, it had been redesigned, and this time by the people inside it. And for the first time, they didn't feel like data. They felt like citizens. It began quietly in email here, a press query there. Former employees of EduTrak, now emboldened by the movement, began coming forward, not just with grievances, but with ideas. A former product manager published a Medium article titled "What We Should Have Built." It outlined what ethical student tech might look like if designed by educators and students first and investors second. It went viral overnight. Then came a flood engineers, UX designers, even former data sales reps releasing documents, diagrams, and perhaps most significantly, open source alternatives. Jasmine took notice. She convened a working group called Rewire, Responsible Educational Web Infrastructure for Rights and Equity. It wasn't just a policy team, it was a moonshot lab for building an entirely new ecosystem governed by transparency and democratic input. Rewire's first prototype. A platform where students owned their own learning profiles. Parents could review any data interaction and teachers could flag and override algorithmic decisions with context notes. It wasn't sleek, it wasn't fast, but it was honest, and that made it powerful. Across the country, universities offered course credit to students who contributed to Rewire's public testing. High school students became code reviewers. Retired teachers became UI testers. One superintendent in Oregon replaced their district's grading software with a Rewire beta and documented the impact weekly. "We don't just see scores," she said, "we see growth." Meanwhile, Jasmine began to receive a different kind of message. Not just horror stories, but blueprints. Teachers sent her hand-drawn flowcharts showing how they redesigned classroom tech around student self-assessment. Parents proposed consent dashboards. One fourth grader in Kansas mailed Jasmine a paper mock-up of a feeling tracker that let students log moods with colors and explain why just for their teacher, not the system. Jasmine hung it in her office. Meanwhile, the Folder Project became a nonprofit folder collective. It offered micro-grants to schools looking to audit their digital tools. It partnered with school counselors, civil liberties organizations, and student unions. It also launched its boldest project yet, the National Listening Library, a digital archive of every anonymized folder letter, tagged by age, region, and concern. The site became not only a watchdog, but a curriculum resource. Civics classes used it to teach data rights. Tech classes used it to teach ethical design. And then came the first international inquiry. A coalition of European education ministers requested to meet with Jasmine. They had seen the viral testimonies, the software breakdowns, and the public hearings. They didn't want to investigate. They wanted to collaborate. Jasmine met with them in Brussels. She shared every framework toolkit and legislative draft. This isn't an American victory, she told them. This is a human pivot. EduTrak's collapse had started with a question. Now it was sparking global answers. Back home, Jasmine returned to where it began, her district's oldest elementary school. She didn't announce it to the press. She just visited. She walked into the library. And there on the wall was a bulletin board titled, "The Folder Letters That Changed Everything." Students had illustrated some of the original stories. A boy wrote a comic strip based on his own experience being flagged for disengaged behavior while drawing in class. His final panel showed a teacher saying, "Maybe drawing is how you focus." Jasmine laughed, then cried, and when she stepped outside, a girl ran up to her. "Are you the folder lady?" Jasmine knelt. "I guess I am." The girl held out a paper. "This is my story. It's not sad, it's just mine." Jasmine read it, then folded it into her hands. "Thank you," she said. "Stories like yours keep the system honest." In Washington, the National Educational Technology Ethics Board released its first public rating index. Companies were scored not just on product performance, but on clarity, consent, and cultural impact. Rewire made the top of the list. Musk, now less visible in the public eye, released a short statement. "We built too quickly and listened too late. The future belongs to those who reverse that." For Jasmine, there was no triumph, just transition. From resistance to renewal. From a red folder to a living archive. From algorithms designed in silence to systems built on stories. And while Jasmine never stopped carrying the folder, she no longer had to carry it alone. It was in classrooms, in boardrooms, in children's drawings, and in the hearts of the next generation of stewards. Years later, in a quiet room tucked inside a modest public library in St. Louis, a child opened a folder. It was not red, not white. This one was yellow, marked with a simple phrase, "Tell your story." The child had never met Jasmine Crockett. She wasn't in the news as much anymore. But the folder had become a rite of passage. Every fifth-grade civics class in the state now had a folder day, a tradition that started with a simple question: how does your school see you? Some kids drew pictures. Some wrote essays. One class filmed a skit about invisible data. Another created a rap: "I'm more than your metrics, your graphs, your design. I'm human, I'm growing, and this story's mine." No one needed reminding what the red folder once meant. It lived in textbooks, in murals, in teacher trainings. But more importantly, it lived in behavior. Tech companies began building folder teams, student advisory boards with veto power. School contracts now included empathy audits. Data dashboards were co-designed with psychologists, not just product managers. And Jasmine returned to where it began, quietly as always. She sat in a small class in Dallas, watching a young girl present her story. The girl had drawn a picture of a house made of books, with windows labeled "Hope, Trust, and My Voice." After the presentation, she looked up at the visitor in the back. "You're the folder lady, right?" Jasmine nodded. "I used to be." The girl smiled. "Now I think we all are." Jasmine smiled back, eyes full. Because movements don't end. They echo. And the folder, it never closed. If this story moved, you don't just scroll. Like this video to support stories that matter. Comment with one word, visible, if you believe every student deserves to be seen. Subscribe for more real stories that hold power to account. Share this video with someone who needs to know the folder is still open.